Okay, so back on the 1979 Scout International, the computer's been installed, the grounds have been done up, the courtesy lights on the underside have been installed, battery has been placed in a good location for testing the wiring and the motor. Dash has been plugged in to test before it is then mounted to the dash. I have pre-primed the fuel pump as it's hooked up. So I unhooked here and we have some good gas, 91 octane, coming to the fuel rail now, pumped it into a fluid bottle. I have also turned over the motor with the starter to get the engine oil moved through the motor before we fire it up. As well as turning over the motor, it's been able to pump some of the power steering fluids through our hydro brew system. So that had a top up as well. And also some of the rad fluid has been getting pumped into the heater core and been topped up. I did just start cranking over the LS. It had a couple light burps as well as one backfire. I'm letting it sit now and running a little bit of diagnostic. And since this LS motor has been sitting a while, I'm going to go forward with pulling off the fuel rail and cleaning each of the injectors. So this fuel rail here will come off and we'll take out this injector down here. And there's a small little process that'll take probably an hour to clean all 8 injectors. And then we'll give it a second try to get this thing fired up and running. Because there's no reason for it not to fire up first try, as we have fuel, we have ignition, and we have all the grounds and everything hooked up. And the computer is pre-tuned for this setup. After the motor's running, the computer should self-learn a little bit of where the intake is, mass airflow sensor, and that's pretty much it. And the map sensor. They're all hooked up, but the computer will have to run to kind of pre-tune itself to get going. But for now, I'm going to start with cleaning the fuel injectors since this motor's been sitting a while and we didn't get initial fire up to be right up and going. Anyways, like little update on the 79 Scout. Looking like we're ready for that. I have it on jack stands as well, as I've been starting to bleed the brakes. All the brake lines are tightened, e-brake cable's on as well. Another little update, I'm finalizing the high steer setup, which is up here. So we got some more of these little washers ordered up since this kit, they shorted us on the washers. And then also with this kit, they remove this lower arm that connects the 2 knuckles and they place it up here. And then they replace the long steering arm with a shorter one. So when we purchased the kit, we were able to get the steering arm, but we didn't get the larger size ball joints or larger size tie rod ends that go in here. So this is about 5/8 and then the original ones are about 1/2 inch. So I did order that up today, as well as the actual steering link that goes from the pitman arm to the knuckle. That's a different arm completely as well, and that had to get ordered up with this lower arm. So lower arm and upper arm just got ordered up, and we'll go from there for the steering. Everything else over here on the Scout is looking pretty decent. As I said, rear brakes are getting looked at, and moving on from there. The fan shroud wherever I put it is here. So this is the fan ready to go. And then I made up a quick little fan shroud here. So this fan shroud has a bend up all the way around. The fan fits nicely inside there, and then a flange with some holes in it that bolts to the rad. So this will be getting painted black, as I didn't end up making it out of aluminum. So this will just get prepped and painted in black, and that will get installed with the rad fan. Everything else here, I got some high temp sheathing for a couple wires that are running down to the starter. And here's the pitman arm that will be getting swapped on. But like I said, we need the crossover links. Okay, minor AC fitment today on the Scout. We have the core mounted on brackets. We have some hoses cut going to the evaporator or condenser. Then going into the engine bay as well as the top line. And I have some wires brought in here from the engine bay to the switch. And the engine bay here, we have 2 lines coming out and going different directions. 1 line here going to the booster, and then 1 line here going to leaving the AC compressor, as well as 2 fittings here to fill the unit and to pressurize it. And then we got 2 lines going back through here, and they go through the inner fender. 2 lines have grommets now, 1 coming out here and 1 just behind it. And then back here, the upper and lower. This is in the far corner of the wheel well, so it shouldn't get touched by the wheel. Going to the inside, I have the unit mounted. I did some rough wiring, as there's only 1 red wire over here that I've been able to find a power source for, 12 volt. We have 1 wire for a ground, and then the other wire was the one going to the switch up in the front. These are internal wires that I need to tuck up and hide. And then we have all the fittings and the hoses coming in down here. It's hard to see, but in theory, this was exactly where I had the fuse box mounted and the computer for the LS. So you can see the holes here that were for the computer. So since this might drip and have moisture and condensation, it says, they have heat tape or I guess insulating tape that goes over all this fittings, but they do say that it might drip. We got a valve here that will be going out and down as a drain for the AC, as well as one over there. So I decided to take some time and move the computer and the fuse box. So that got moved to behind the dash, which is basically behind the cigarette lighter now. I did have it up here for a moment, but then this is the heat box that I had to modify so we could still get the heat box and defrost into under the dash. So we were able to barely fit it on top of the AC unit. And then it goes to the defrost vents. As I mentioned, it was pretty tight fit. So initially it's about a 2-foot heat unit. Now we got it down to about 10 inches, which the main heat will be the defrost, which is mandatory for a vehicle inspection. The other side I did have capped off here as we hit the fuse box that I mounted here. and all the wires behind the dash as well. So it's seeming like this AC unit's taking up a fair bit of space, even though it's mounted pretty low. It's made it so we can't put the computer in the corner here or the fuse box. So pushing that over towards the steering column, we still have the original fuse box, plus the LS swapped fuse box behind here and the computer. In the last video, you probably seen we had it fired up lately. Isn't running the best, so they suggested shortening the air intake. So I put it here temporary, nice and short, to get it running. As well as still reviewing the injectors. So over here is another view of the AC unit. And behind the dash here, you can see the computer's mounted against the firewall now. And only thing we have to run through the dash now is just the ducting to go to the vents, which we should have enough space. And that's all for the Scout. Here's the original piece that came off the heater box. So we're still getting the defrost, which is the flap for defrost. And then the only thing we're now deleting is the interior heat, which is just a couple extra holes that are going down into the footwell. And then 2 holes were over here going up into the defrost. So we kept the defrost, as I mentioned. And now to heat the vehicle, you'll just have to keep the defrost on for the interior heat. And it won't be the end of the world, hopefully. Again, we got the AC unit mounted up today, and I gave the gentleman a call to see if he wants to come crimp some fittings, as I don't have the crimps for these. If I don't hear back from him, I'll be going to the industrial shop to get them to quickly crimp them, as I have the lines ran to the best of my ability, all correct according to the diagrams and to the right places, versus where we can and cannot do this. Small little update on the AC kit here. The other day we got together with the AC guy and crimped these ends. So these ends have been fit and crimped onto the AC hoses, as well as the grommets are on there to go through the firewall. And so now I'll be back to installing these. They've all been crimped, and put the O-rings on the end of each one with a little oil, and then screw these on, and the AC kit will be getting closer to final install. Okay, so here on the Scout, we have the fan installed with a little fan shroud, as well as the steering linkage. It has been painted and installed and goes to the new steering arm, which is right here, and across, new joints. Over here we have some windshield bits and some bits primed, as well as the trans cover. And the other side of the hood is now painted black, as well as the tow hitch here is all black.